Chronic respiratory disease is now the third leading cause of death on Earth, taking roughly 4 million lives a year. The largest single piece of it, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, killed about 3.5 million people in 2021 alone. That is close to 1 in every 20 deaths on the planet. The lung is failing at scale in the century with more medicine in it than any other. For almost all of human history, when a chest seized up and the air would not come, no one reached for an inhaler. They reached for a plant. And working pharmacies, in at least 5 separate traditions on 3 continents, all stocked the same short list for the failing lung. Greek physicians, Roman naturalists, Native American healers, Ayurvedic doctors, English country apothecaries, none of them in contact with the others, and all of them landing on the same handful of plants. Then the shelves emptied. Somewhere between the rise of the patent drug and now, almost all of that knowledge quietly disappeared. These are the 5 plants the old pharmacies of the world handed out for the lungs, what the laboratories have actually proven about each one, and the reason they slipped off the shelf while a modern respiratory drug industry was built next door. We start at the edge of living memory. Number 5. Elecampane. Picture a physic garden behind a medieval monastery, a walled plot with one ragged towering plant in the back row that looks like a sunflower gone wild. 6 feet tall, drooping yellow petals, leaves the size of a forearm. A monk digs down and pulls up the root, thick and bitter and faintly aromatic, then dries it, grinds it, and stores it for the winter coughs. Inula Helenium. The Romans called it Helenian and said it grew from the tears of Helen of Troy. Pliny the Elder recorded it for the chest, and the Greek Hippocratic writers used it before him. The same plant and its close cousins turn up in traditional Chinese medicine and in Ayurveda for cough and asthma, and its range runs from Spain to the western edge of China. In the 1800s, it crossed into America and was listed in the United States Pharmacopeia for pulmonary complaints. The root is nearly half inulin, a soft, soothing starch, and it carries 2 compounds, allantolactone and isoallantolactone, that help loosen and lift congestion out of the airway. This channel deals in the documented, so here is the documented part. The modern clinical trials on elecampane barely exist. What it has is the record. 2,000 years of physicians in unconnected cultures writing down the same use and an official place in the National Drug List of the United States right up until the botanical section of that book was quietly retired. It holds the number 5 spot, not on lab data, but on the sheer length of its memory. Number 4. Lobelia. Elecampane was forgotten. This next plant had a whole system of medicine built on it. In the forests of the northeastern United States, before it was the United States, the Penobscot, the Cherokee, the Iroquois, and other eastern woodland peoples used a thin, weedy plant with pale blue flowers and small swollen seed pods. They dried the leaves and smoked them, or crumbled them onto hot coals so someone in the grip of an asthma attack could lean over and breathe the vapor. The colonists who watched gave it a name that stuck: Indian tobacco, Lobelia inflata. In the early 1800s, an American healer named Samuel Thompson built an entire medical system around it and made it for a time one of the most prescribed lung remedies in the country. Its active alkaloid, lobeline, stimulates the body's drive to breathe and relaxes the muscle wrapped around the airway, close to what a modern bronchodilator does. Then there is the part that should not be possible. On the other side of the planet, in India, a separate species of the same genus was being used, on its own, for asthma and bronchitis. 2 continents, the same kind of plant, the same use, no contact between them. The honest note here is a warning, not a study. Lobelia's safe dose and its dangerous dose sit very close together. Thompson dosed it hard enough to be blamed for a patient's death, and that narrow margin is part of why it left the respectable shelf. Convergence does not mean gentle. It means many separate peoples kept pointing at the same plant, and this one had teeth. Number 3. Vasaka. This one did not just survive the laboratory, it walked back out wearing a brand name. In the warm lowlands of India grows an evergreen shrub with glossy leaves and a white flower curled into the shape of a lion's open mouth, which is what its Sanskrit name describes. For thousands of years, it was the first thing an Ayurvedic physician reached for when a patient could not breathe. Justitia adhatoda, vasaka, the Malabar nut. It sits in the Charaka Samhita as a tonic for the lung, and it has been the backbone of Indian respiratory medicine ever since. Its leaves carry 2 alkaloids, vasacine and vasaquinone, that open the airway and thin the mucus so it can be cleared. By 1955, it was official enough to be written into the Indian Pharmacopeia as a syrup and a liquid extract. So far, it sounds like the others. An old leaf with a long reputation, except here, the lab did not confirm the plant. It mined it. In 1950, the German pharmaceutical company Boehringer Ingelheim took vasacine, the molecule from that leaf, and built a synthetic version of it. They called it bromhexine and sold it across Europe as a cough syrup under the name Bisolvon. A second drug, ambroxol, came from the same molecular root. Both are still sold in pharmacies in dozens of countries today. There is a real chance that the last time you took something for a chest cold, you swallowed a laboratory descendant of a shrub an Indian physician named in a manuscript 2,000 years ago. Number 2. Mullein. You have almost certainly walked past this one. A tall roadside spike, sometimes 6 or 7 feet, with leaves so soft and woolly they feel like felt, topped by a long column of small yellow flowers. The dried stalk burns so well that people once dipped it in fat and used it as a torch, which is why one of its old names is the candlewick plant, Verbascum thapsus. The Greek physician Dioscorides recorded it for the chest almost 2,000 years ago, and the Romans used it the same way. Then comes the part that makes Mullein strange. Settlers carried it across the Atlantic, where it spread like a weed, and the native peoples who had never seen it brewed the leaves into tea and smoked them for coughs and asthma. A plant crosses an ocean, lands in front of a culture that has never encountered it, and that culture hands it the same job. In Ireland, it became a country cure for consumption, boiled in milk so patients could keep it down, written up by a Dublin physician in 1883. Today, it turns up in traditional formulas across India. The leaves are full of mucilage, a slick gel that coats and calms an irritated airway, along with saponins that help loosen mucus. Mullein is having a moment online, and the hype is running ahead of the evidence. So here is the truth. The clinical trials are thin. A few small studies and a great deal of tradition. What makes Mullein worth the number 2 spot is not the data. It is that the trials are missing and the worldwide agreement is not. Number 1. Thyme. The last plant on the shelf is one you can almost certainly find in your kitchen. A low, woody shrub with tiny grey-green leaves and a sharp, clean scent the moment you crush it. Thyme grew wild across the Mediterranean and the Near East, in the kitchens and medicine chests of Egypt, Greece, and the Levant, and healers reached for it against coughs and chest infections for as long as there have been records of healers at all. Thymus vulgaris. What sets thyme apart is what chemistry did to it. Chemists pulled the active compound out of the leaf, a phenol called thymol, and thymol did not stay in the herb cabinet. It became one of the most common antiseptics in the modern world. The sharp note in mouthwash, a disinfectant for surgical instruments. The plant, an Egyptian and a Greek and an Arab healer all reached for, is sitting in a bottle above your bathroom sink right now. We just stopped calling it medicine. And unlike most of this list, thyme has the trials. A double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in the journal Arzneimittelforschung in 2007 followed 361 adults with acute bronchitis and a heavy productive cough, each given either a thyme and primrose extract or a matched placebo. Coughing fits fell by 67% in the thyme group against 51% on placebo, a clear and statistically solid gap. A companion trial the year before, with thyme and ivy, found the same thing. The compounds relax the airway and help the lungs clear themselves, which is what a Roman cook and a medieval monk were using it for, centuries before anyone could measure why. The plant in your spice rack has a placebo-controlled paper trail. Most of your spice rack does not. Step back and look at the 5 together. A monastery root the Romans tied to Helen of Troy, a weed the Penobscot burned over coals, a lion's mouth leaf that became a drug sold in dozens of countries, a roadside candle plant that crossed an ocean and kept its job, and the thyme in your kitchen with a clinical trial behind it. 5 plants, 5 traditions that never spoke to one another, every one of them pressed into the service of the same failing organ. Convergence is not magic. And this documentary will not pretend it is. The reason is almost humbling in how plain it is. A blocked airway in Athens behaves like a blocked airway in the Appalachians, and the plants that loosen it were growing in the local fields of every one of those places, waiting for anyone patient enough to look. So if 5 separate civilizations reach the same answer, and the lab has turned one of those plants into a drug your pharmacy still sells, why is almost none of this in your doctor's office? Not a conspiracy. An incentive structure. A molecule built in a laboratory can be patented, and that patent buys a 20-year monopoly, long enough to earn back the hundreds of millions of dollars that drug approval now costs. A plant that has grown wild for 10,000 years cannot be patented. Nobody owns it. So when Boehringer wanted a product, they did not bottle vasaka. They rebuilt its molecule into bromhexine, something they could own, and sent that to market. The plant stayed where it always was, free, on the shelf, and unprofitable. You can patent bromhexine. You cannot patent vasaka. That is the reason 4 of these 5 are still folklore, and only 1 is in your medicine cabinet. The shelves still hold what they always held: elecampane in the cool ditches of Europe and Asia, lobelia in the open woods of North America, vasaka across the Indian subcontinent, mullein on roadsides on nearly every continent, including almost certainly somewhere within a mile of where you are sitting, and thyme probably in a jar in your kitchen right now. What changed is not the plants, it is who is still looking. If this was worth your time, subscribe. We rebuild the record 1 shelf at a time. Tap the bell so the next one reaches you without you having to come back and find it. And if one of these was familiar, if a grandparent or an old neighbor kept a jar of it somewhere and swore by it, put the story in the comments. That is how this knowledge survived the first time. People who paid attention and passed it on.